Believe it or not, I have a young niece and occasionally have to endure the cartoons she likes to watch. I find them rather insulting, and I think I might know one of the reasons why. So instead of looking at those, I'm going to talk about one that I liked when I was a kid. Alfred J. Kwak. Hello everyone, I'm High Treason, and today I'm going to have a look at a cartoon series called Alfred J. Kwak. I don't really do videos about cartoons, so yeah, it's probably going to be a bit janky if you're used to channels that do stuff like that, because I don't review cartoons. I talk about computer hardware, so my way of doing this is I'm going to kind of walk you through the key points of the first episode and then just talk about the show in general, I guess. We'll see how it turns out. Anyway, let's just get on with it. The cartoon begins with a rather long introduction, around a minute and a half, which may actually be a little excessive, but it seems to be well animated, and it offers glimpses of what is to come. It also tells us that Alfred was originally created by Herman van Veen, a Dutch playwright among other things, who also wrote quite a lot of the music himself, and in the Dutch version voices a character and sings quite often. But the cartoon was animated in Japan, lending it a strange style that's not quite anime but not quite Western either. Some people might get a slightly Moomin vibe from this, and that would make sense as the same studio, Telecable, went on to make the animated version of that shortly after this show, with the same Dennis Livson on. Still, the music is rather laid back, as well as catchy. Good luck getting that little lullaby in the middle of it out of your head. It seems like a nice, happy, steadily paced show. As we go into the first episode, we see the beautiful scenery of Waterland and meet Alfred's father, as well as his friend, Henk the Merle. I doubt I'm spoiling much by telling you Alfred's father, Johan, meets Alfred's mother-to-be, Anna, and they fall in love. Before long, they're waiting on their brood of ducklings to arrive, fending off a harrier as well as some rather snobbish crow and blackbird who don't consider waterfowl to be real birds like them and remark that their eggs are of inferior quality. We will never meet these characters again, but they shall be important later on. The episode ends with Alfred hatching, as ever such a cute little duck. It seems like a wonderfully upbeat little cartoon. What kind of wacky antics could Alfred and the rest of the cast possibly get themselves into? Well, shit. In fact, before we even get to that point, it's already clear that this cartoon is something different. Alfred isn't even really in the first episode beyond just a few seconds. Unusually for a cartoon aimed at young children, the series has a continual and consistent narrative. Every action has consequences stretching far into the future. Now let me tell you, this show is not afraid to go places other shows wouldn't even think of. Very dark places. We've met Alfred's parents and we've come to like them. They're surely set for a happy life with Alfred and his siblings. But this is soon shattered, as their home is demolished to build an amusement park, forcing them to flee for the former home of Hank's grandfather. Things are not going to be sunshine and roses here. They can never go back, and they never will. As Alfred runs off, Hank goes to collect him. Johann and Anna continue onwards, crossing the road as, in a display of unparalleled confidence, these characters we've already come to like meet their untimely demise, leaving Alfred all alone, with no parents and no siblings, the burden now falling on Hank to raise his old friend's child. As a kid, this hit me really hard, just like that. Death was truly a real threat in this show, and nobody was safe from it, making quite plain the harsh reality that anyone and anything you care about could be gone forever without a moment's notice.
Waar Mama?
Alfred.
Here we have the origins of the character and his story. Creator Herman van Veen was travelling one day when he accidentally ran over a duck. Upon later seeing a mother duck with her offspring, he wondered if it might not be the partner of the duck he'd run over. How could you explain to her that her partner was gone? Upon being asked to write a play by a friend, he chose this as the subject, and Alfred was born. As far as I'm aware, this was quite well known in Holland, and at one point even got adapted into comic books, and I believe the profits went to UNICEF or something like. It certainly has a longer history than you might expect. Nonetheless, this brashness from the very start really sets the cartoon apart from the rest. Seeing it as a kid, this held my interest because something was always happening. Something much more complex and real than losing a magic glove or crying over a broken paper hat. This cartoon really didn't pull any punches, taking on subjects with a level of maturity very rarely seen in a children's cartoon. In fact, I've seen cartoons aimed at adults that would shrivel up and cower in fear at touching upon some of the subjects Alfred takes on. As a child, the story seemed more grown up, and as much as I'm sure it sounds quite silly, it made me feel more grown up to watch, because sure, sometimes it was a little confusing and even a little scary, but I felt like I could handle it. I could take it on with Alfred alongside me. And Alfred was a relatable character. From the start, he'd had to cope with a major loss, far worse than many of us face at such a young age. And there's no magic wand to make it all better. Hank becomes his adopted father, and they have to simply make the best of a bad situation. Through the bright, colourful animation, this seemed much more real, because in real life we have to face bad situations, we have to deal with losses, we have to make sacrifices. Alfred's young and energetic, but he's not perfect, and he can step out of line. In fact, the ending song says as much, at least in the English dub, arguably iterating it much better than I.
Young Alfred is quite sporty, he likes to be quite sporty. He's very much like any normal lively lad. Sometimes he can be naughty, but even when he's naughty, you'll find he's never, ever really bad.
Overall, he's generally likeable, and through the eyes of a child, you could place yourself in his shoes in the adventures upon which he embarks. Even the supporting cast is good as well. Hank I really like. I think he is a good father figure to Alfred. He's a voice of reason. He clearly cares for him a lot, and he does give him advice. He's small and he's fairly mild-mannered, but at the same time, he's not afraid to lay down the truths and throw his weight around and look after himself when he has to. Especially if this involves defending Alfred when he's young. As the series progresses, we learn more of the world and its inhabitants, meeting Dolph, a crow who is part blackbird, but he tries to hide this by painting his yellow beak black. Dolph will become a major antagonist as time progresses. He's the child of that snobbish family from the first episode. He's a bully, and he makes fun of Alfred, yet they're not all that dissimilar in some ways, and you almost feel sorry for him early on. He's just a kid with problems. He has his weaknesses and insecurities like anybody else. He's not just the bad guy from the start, and he's got his reasons for being the way he is. His character grows like any other into what he becomes farther on, and it's almost sad to see how he strays farther and farther down the wrong path, never to turn back. How he goes from a poorly behaved child with issues to something far worse. The early episodes are a little slower and a little more tame than those which come later, and I won't spoil it too much for you. But as Alfred grows up, he faces bigger and bigger challenges, seeing his country fall under a fascist dictatorship, seeing other nations at continual war, learning of corruption, sacrifice and hardships in the world. Watching the show as an adult, the presentation sometimes comes off as quite simple. It's very black and white on how it takes these subjects on, and it feels like two factors are at play. Firstly, balancing it for children to understand, where it seems about right for their shorter attention spans, but in some cases it almost seems to be the constraint of the 22-minute runtime, as well as the fact that there are only 52 episodes, so as much as you could carry on a story into another episode, I guess you'd have to think of that on the broad scale. How are you going to share episodes out between different story arcs? Occasionally the pacing does seem to suddenly rush towards the end of an episode, but I suppose you should expect such things, and it could be far worse. Visually, however, it never really misses the mark. The animation's good, and there are far more attempts at perspective, lighting, and full frame rate than a little cartoon like this probably had any right to go now. Sometimes it's genuinely quite impressive what they managed to pull off. I doubt they had too much of a budget for this. The soundtrack is also fantastic. There's a lot of texture and a lot of depth. It ranges from relaxing to upbeat and energetic to uncommonly dark and moody. In some cases, been reflective and slow, but other times been frantic and imposing. And maybe it is just my love of music, but something in this soundtrack really conveys more than is usual for a Saturday morning cartoon. There certainly were other cartoons with exceptionally well-produced music. The Raccoons will always come to mind, but that just sounded like contemporary music for the most part. Alfred J. Kwak's soundtrack seems to have far more feeling behind it than any of the others. It does sound silly, but tell me you don't feel something once you reach the end of the 13th episode as the sun rises. There's just a real impression that somebody cared somewhere.
En dat met mijn eigen ogen te zien. Wat prachtig.
Hey, Alfred. Kom op, wakker worden. Alfred. Ik was ook zomaar in slaap gevallen. En dat terwijl het zo spannend was. Hoe kan dat nou, hè?
Oh, de zon is al op.
And then it was their full intention for the music to add more texture, to convey more of the story than the visuals and dialogue alone could ever do. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the English dubbing. It really isn't fantastic, and some of the actors do seem to try their best. Others sound like they were watching the clock, waiting for their paycheck to come in.
I'm sorry, sir. That's my bed.
Where have you been?
The lavatory, sir.
Listen, lad, you're supposed to be in your bed when the lights go out. Understand?
Yeah, yes, sir.
If you're not a native English speaker and you want to watch this show, you may do better to try and find a dub in your own language. We're even missing a few episodes in English, and subtitles only exist for a few of the other dubs. I think the Cowboys and Indians episode doesn't even have that yet, so English speakers are going to have to miss out on that one for the time being. Unless somebody manages to find it. Jeez, the guns. Yeah, this show was not scared of guns. There are many instances of things that really make me think, yeah, this show isn't coming back on TV anytime soon, is it? And I feel like this might be one of the reasons. Even Alfred wields a gun on more than one occasion, and another character, an antagonist, attempts to murder someone on screen in one of the late episodes. The As he'd already expressed a will to commit genocide at an earlier point in the series, it seems like small fry for him. And you have to think, when Alfred wields a gun, what is that saying? That the only thing that can sometimes stop the bad guy with the gun is a good guy with a gun? It's interesting to think about. And I'm sure everybody takes something different away from it if they even try thinking that much into it. But nonetheless, this show was harsh sometimes. In fact, another character murders a fish and cans it in an earlier episode. I thought this was utterly horrible as a kid. Of course, this is quickly outdone by the same character showing utter disregard for the lives of families in his town, overcome by greed, no matter the cost of the well-being to others or the world at large. Again, the cartoon displays that it isn't afraid to show the darker side of the world, that there are bad people who do bad things. But at the same time, the show also has comedy. The mood still manages to be generally upbeat. There are still jokes. There's merriment, and there's even a hint of satire. There's Michael Duxon in it, for heaven's sake. I don't even think it's possible to dislike Professor Boffin, who Alfred befriends mid-series, and I think everyone roots for Alfred and Winnie, a black duck who enters Waterland as a refugee, a story that I thought would have aged horribly by today's standards. I know what you're thinking, although it is probably remembering that you would have to judge such things by the standards of 30 years ago. It wouldn't be far to do it by today's standards. And in either case, it really hasn't aged as badly as it might have done. The messaging seems strangely well-reasoned. I'm not going to get political here, but what I expected to come off as insufferable propaganda really didn't. Honestly, you'll be surprised how well it manages this. And it does turn out to be key to the wider plot of the show, as Winnie becomes Alfred's love interest. Alfred, being in his early adulthood by this point in the show, is growing up now. It's genuinely quite refreshing in the current times where you know a character like Winnie would be surrounded by buzzwords. At every opportunity, you'd be reminded that she's a black, minority, female immigrant. And that would be 100% of her character and nothing more. She could do no wrong. She'd dominate the screen and just take everything away from it because of bad writing. But this show doesn't linger on those aspects. And it doesn't have to, because Winnie has her own agency. She can make her own decisions, and can generally look after herself, but also has her vulnerabilities and flaws. It feels natural, and the character actually has depth beyond being this token piece to please the right people in the media. I said I wouldn't get political, and I'm not. This is a writing argument, or at the very least, a character development argument. I think a lot of cartoons, films, books, comics and games could probably learn a thing or two here on how to actually develop a character beyond being that cookie-cutter copy of a million other things that have absolutely no personality. I mean, let's be honest, it's a sad state of affairs when a show aimed at young children from 30 years ago can produce a character with more substance, maturity and depth than a highly budgeted Hollywood movie or an overfunded comic book. An industry that is so bloated by this point, it's a wonder it doesn't suffocate on its own mass. Nonetheless, as I've stated before, Alfred J. Kwak displays a level of maturity in many regards that often outstrips shows that were actually aimed at an older audience. The characters themselves grow up over time, just like you or I, and they take on real hardship. Although I've been met with mixed reactions when showing this cartoon to people that have never heard of it, of which there are an alarmingly high number in my country, and I think that's just a crime. In many cases, they seem concerned, and wouldn't want children of theirs to see it because of the themes the show explores. Because heaven forbid a child learns that there are actually hardships in life. By contrast, I applaud the show for the sheer size of its guts to take on such a burden, and this may be part of why I hold it in such high regard, and why it has such a special place for me. there was a time towards the end of my childhood when I started to realise just how crap the world could be. My parents always seemed to be busy, and I couldn't help feeling that maybe I didn't want to grow up. Even though I'd always wanted to and hated being a child, that maybe now it wasn't so fun anymore, that I wanted to turn back the clock. And in this, I dug up a stack of old tapes my parents had recorded a few years prior, filled with cartoons that had aired on the television. Among them was Alfred J. Kwak, and I'd seen it before when the tapes were recorded, but seeing it again made me realise that it was all just a part of life, that I didn't want to be like the show's antagonist who never gets past his insecurities, and I wanted to be more like Alfred, taking responsibility and stepping up to the challenges without knowing whether I'd come out the victor or not, because it was the right thing to do, and I wasn't prepared to let the situation get the better of me. The show didn't damage me by unflatteringly revealing the cold hard truths of life. It made me stronger. It made me question the world around me, and it taught me valuable lessons. In a world where those with children often slack off and let the television do the parenting for them, I think I'd rather a child grew up watching this than the half-baked Nancy crap they show on the television now, because that way, even if their real parents are neglectful, there's still a slight chance they might turn out as somewhat well-balanced individuals in later life, with an idea of what's going on and what they might have to face, rather than being delicate little snowflakes who cry at the slightest thing, and rather than having had their brains melted by the telefuglies or whatever nonsense they're killing children's brain cells with today. But I'm done here, and I'll let the show speak for itself from now on. You can probably find it if you want to on the internet, especially if you're a Dutch speaker. As far as I know, there's never been a full DVD release, and I'd kill to get my hands on one. I'd really like to see it, but something tells me it's not going to happen, and that we'll have to rely on the faded VHS rips for the time being. So there we go, that's that. I'd say I don't have much else to say, but I really could talk about it till the end of time. I mean, this show has everything, you know. It has aliens, fascist takeovers, cowboys and Indians, and you name it, it's probably got it. I think it has zombies in it, but maybe that's for the best. It's stood up a lot better than I thought it would. It's, you know, there's plenty of times I'm like, oh, this is just going to devolve into insufferable propaganda. It never really does. I'm quite surprised. It may come off a little preachy sometimes, but I think it's more a case of, you know, even when it misses the mark, it seems as though it was well-intentioned, and you have to simplify things a little bit, I guess, because you're trying to convey these things to young children. So you got to be careful with how complex you make it. They don't have the attention spans or the understanding yet, but they understand more than a lot of people give them credit for, that's for certain. And, you know, as someone who grew up watching it, I really do appreciate that, you know, as Herman Van Veen and everyone else for really treating my young developing brain with an ounce of respect, because a lot of people seem to see, oh, we're making a kids show, as an opportunity to slack off and not try. And when you think about it, you should feel some level of responsibility there. I mean, you could shape somebody's mind to some extent with that thing. You should put the effort in, and you should show more respect, as this show seems to do. Because if we want to give it a watch, the English dub is missing a few episodes. The VHS rips of it are pretty fucking bad quality, and even then the dub isn't that good. So if you speak Dutch, I think you have every episode of that out there on the internet, and I think the same goes for German. Can't say for other languages, it was dubbed in loads of different languages, so you might be able to find episodes of that. Somebody uploaded most of the soundtrack as well, you can find that, and that was awesome to me, because I always liked the music in this show, and being able to hear it on its own is something I'd wanted to do for years. You can finally do it, and it's fun trying to figure out what keyboards they used, because there was the obligatory DX7 Mark II in there, which is a keyboard I owned. I don't own it anymore, it was pretty bad. I think they have a Korg M1, and what made me smile is there's a Casio CZ1. And if you know me, you know I own one of the. You know, I think this might explain something about the hardware I own now. But yeah, I think the most prominent instance of that is right here.
La 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 la.
There's definitely a CZ1. I think it's factory preset A4 and A6 been played there for those strings. And you can hear the bass from it and stuff in other songs. I'd suspected for years that they had one, and I guess that confirms it. You don't usually hear them in anything, which is a shame, because they're really good synths. They're very capable. So that really made me smile. They used a CZ1. That's awesome. But, yeah, what's in the show now? Favourite episodes for me, I think, are the Circus episode and the Pyramid episode. The Circus one just seemed to be on a lot when I was a kid, so it just reminds me of when I was a kid, you know. And the Pyramid one, I don't know, I just like it. That's one of the ones that has that smooth perspective animation in that. Really, I don't think they had any right to have in a little cartoon like this. No, I'm complaining. It's cool. It's like the animators would just go for it every now and then. And those two episodes even, they get you thinking, because you've got to bear in mind, this show's a little bit older than Sonic the Hedgehog. And you almost wonder if the people who come up with Sonic the Hedgehog might have seen this thing and might have been influenced a little bit, if only subconsciously, because, I mean, you could certainly come up with an argument for that guy being a proto-Robotnik, and, well, this show does have a Japanese dub, and it's not the only one, because, well, clear there's a little bit Blaze the Cat, so, yeah, you have to, I don't think it's the case, but it's an interesting thought. Who knows? Who really knows, I suppose, at the end of the day. I'm kind of disappointed. I have an Alfred J. Kwak t-shirt, and I can't find it anywhere. I know I've seen it, I know I still have it, but it's just vanished, as it would, so I guess it's not important. It's, yeah, and I know we focused a lot on the darker aspects of the show. It does have upbeat, happy stuff in it. I mean, Alfred's generally an upbeat character, but I didn't focus on that because you kind of expect that in a kid's cartoon, and so it's not really what sets the show apart. And that's why I didn't talk about it so much. It's, like I say, that's really not its defining thing. And there's definitely a lot of cases where watching this, you know, I know why I feel insulted by the kids' TV that's on these days. It's because I'm used to this, and so the unintelligible crap they put on now is... I just find it insulting. When I was a kid, I remember Telefugglies coming on the television, and I'm like, have I already outgrown kids' TV? Because this just seems dumb. And I kind of watched it, and I'm like, no, the TV just got stupid, like really stupid. And there's a kid I know who, he grew up on that, and he used to speak like a telefugly because his parents didn't pay too much attention to him. They'd just put him in front of the telly to shut him up, which a lot of parents do, which is its own argument unto itself. And so he'd show up, at me, and I used to ignore him, and the whole family would yell at me, don't ignore him! It's like, I'm trying to set him an example. If he talks to me properly, I will respond. Well, don't ignore him! He's like, like, you know he's going to get his head kicked in when he goes to school in a few weeks, isn't he? You know, he's going to get, I'm not going to feel responsible, you feel responsible. And what happens? He gets his head kicked in at school. But I'd ignore him, and by about the 5th attempt, he'd just speak to me normally. So I don't feel responsible for that, but because a lot of parents do that, they just plant their kid in front of the telly. If I was a parent, I'd much sooner they were watching Alfred J. Kwak than the Telefugglies, you know? It's something to bear in mind. But they never will, because, you know, watching this now, there's a lot of them moments that you go past, and you'll get what I mean if I see it, where it's quite blunt about things, which I rather like, where you're just like, yeah, this isn't coming back on the telly anytime soon. Don't think you can say some of that now. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, that's really all I got to say. I don't know if we'll do any more of these. I mean, it shocks me how many people in England haven't heard of this. Well, I talk to Europeans on the internet, they often seem to know about it. English people just seem to have forgotten about this, which I think is a real shame. If you like cartoons, I would recommend at least trying to give it a watch. You know, just to see what it's about and what's going on. other cartoons I would talk about, I'd imagine it's been done to death on them already. I always thought about doing a video on the raccoons, but I don't think I ever will. There's not much point. I think everyone knows about that. And so yeah, that's really it, I guess. I'm High Treason. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and remember, don't be a screw-up, load DOS 622 up. And lastly, God bless the National Crow Party. Well now, last minute edition. It seems there might have actually been a full DVD release in Dutch. And, well, so I can't remember the guy's name, but I'll link to him. He made up full English subtitles for it. So, yeah, if you find the upload on YouTube, you can use those subtitles with it. Like, say you would download those and play them in VLC and just set the subtitle delay to 88.2 seconds, I think seems to be about right when I tried. And then you can have the Dutch dub with English subtitles. So then you get a good dub and better quality video, and you get English subtitles, and plus then you get the original dialogue, because they did change some of it in the English dub, which, you know, I don't really know why they did that, but they did, so yeah, that's possibly an option. And then you get every episode and everything as well. Obviously for people in other languages, I don't know, but that solves a problem with English speaking viewers at least, you know. So that's pretty cool. I'm probably going to watch through it again now. Some point. Anyways, yeah, like I said, I'm High Treason. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.